going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the best 10 brawlers in the game right now and looking at the best brawlers to counter them. So we're going to look at 3 or 4 examples on how to counter all of the top meta brawlers, because of course you want to know how to win games a lot easier, and you're going to see these brawlers a lot, especially in your rank games, etc. So you want to know how to draft against them and whatever else. So quickly, before we jump into the video, subscribe if you're not already. Getting close to 300k. Really appreciate the support. Anyways, let's jump into it then. So the best brawler in the game right now probably is going to be Angelo, and let's look at the brawlers that counter him the best. So in my experience, it's pretty hard to counter Angelo. There's a few ways that you can counter him. My experience is that using brawlers like Max and Poco in synergy is really good right now, especially since Max has got the recent hypercharge buff. It's really helped him out. You've also got Poco, who's just got a lot of healing, and with the aggression can really push Angelo back into spawn. You've also got brawlers like Piper and Nanny that are decent into Angelo. I wouldn't really say they're like completely hard countering, because Angelo is just still so good. But a good Piper can still at least, you know, tap Angelo a few times, get a quick double tap. A lot of the time, Angelo can just jump away from a gadget, for example. Also, Nanny as well can deal a lot of damage, but a very fast movement speed is just pretty hard overall. And then there's brawlers like Mr. B and Mortis. So if we're taking a look at the draft version of it, then you can see on this website. I'll leave a link to them in the description. Actually, pretty goated website. Power League Prodigy. So for example, let's go through one quickly. So we've got Julian Beetles here, which it's very rare that the opponents will get an Angelo, but if they were to pick an Angelo here, then I'll just quite simply go something along the lines of, well, definitely a Max, and then probably look for something else aggressive, maybe like a Jackie, maybe like a Mortis to combine with it. But because it's Julian Beetles, it's going to be like a Poco, for example. So that's just like a good way to counteract Angelo as a first pick. So jumping into the next best brawler in the meta, we have Melody. She could easily be the best brawler in the game, and it's really hard to counter her still. But there's one brawler in the game in particular who I think does by far the best job in countering, and that's going to be Cordelius. The main reason being is once you put Melody into the Shadow Realm, she'll actually lose all of the notes that she gained previously outside of the Shadow Realm, and then you have to hit, of course, 3 shots to gain your notes back, but then you're kind of stuck in water without your super, and by the time that you've actually closed the gap onto Melody, the notes won't even do anything against you. You'll just be able to just rip through her. Your DPS in a 1v1 will just win every single time. Trust me, use Cordelius to counter Melody. There's other few interactions which I've noticed as well with countering Melody. One, I've actually realized that Meg is a somewhat decent counter to Melody. It's not going to like completely rip through Melody, but at the same time, it's really hard to actually get a kill onto Meg, especially with the knockback and everyone else. You just survive, essentially. Melody can't get a free kill, especially if there's teammates in and around you. And then lastly, I went with Buzz. I think Tank's a decent counter to Melody a lot of the time. Sometimes she can just get away with her super. But for example, let's go through Hot Potato. So her best game mode heist, of course, for whatever reason, if the teammates leave Melody in play, I don't know why they would do that. Of course, they get the first pick. And then in terms of heist, for example, I would actually just simply go a brawler like Cordelius. Of course, this is just very theoretical. And then I'll just go with another kind of tanky base race brawler, because she's just so good at dealing damage. So I want to kind of match that either with like a BB, like a Bull, Primo, Buzz, something along those lines. I'll probably go with something like BB just to really counter Melody, because you got to try and beat her at her own game in the base race and just go with more DPS. So now we're moving on to another meta brawler who's extremely hard to kill. It is Sandy. So I was just really struggling to find proper hard counters to Sandy. If you don't know, Sandy's super just enables him to win pretty much all the matchups, even against his biggest counters. You know, typically tanks are pretty good at killing Sandy, but then they feed his super, which can just lead to overwhelming interactions. You know the gist with Sandy. I think, in my opinion, one of the best counters to Sandy is actually Jean. In a few maps, you can't really counter Sandy with Jean, but I think in general, it can be pretty decent, because the thing about Sandy is that you want to stay kind of unnoticed. You want to be able to like glide in and out of bushes, but with Jean, with the vision gear, you can kind of spot him, and especially within the sandstorm, Jean's scouting capabilities are really good. So I think Jean's a decent matchup into Sandy. Don't think it hard counters him, but pretty decent. Next is Amber. So the best way to deal with Sandy is by outranging him. It's easier said than done, but you just need to be able to get the pinch and not feed him that super. So using Amber, keeping distance and also breaking open the grass can really allow you to counter him. And the last one is going to be Nita. So I don't think it's really like, again, a hard counter because Sandy outranges Nita. But at the same time, the good thing about Nita is that once she gets her bet and her hypercharge, it should be able to push Sandy even further back into spawn. So it's kind of just like a hypercharge mess. Both brawlers are going to get a lot of supers and hypercharges, but Nita should overall win the interaction, if you get what I mean. There's also other interactions like Buzz, like Jackie, for example. So I think it's pretty hard. When Sandy has a good map, the only thing that counters him, as I said, is like the map pool. So if Sandy has a good map, just completely ban him out. You're just not going to be able to win against him. But for whatever reason, if they've just got a free Sandy first pick on the best Sandy map in the game center stage, there are a few ways that you can maybe go about it. You can probably go with Amber to break open the grass, for example. Or you could go to long lines of like Jackie, Buzz, just try and constantly target the Sandy in the 1v1, but it's pretty hard to win that matchup overall. Moving into the next brawler we're looking to counter, it is Max. So Max is a sole 1v1 brawler, isn't like completely broken. She's more of an enabler, she's a support brawler. She can allow different brawlers into the game, you know, max speed with Sandy, Ems, and just overall, she's just good in that way. So I think there are brawlers that can beat her pretty comfortably in a 1v1. And the first brawler is going to be Lola. So I think Lola is a fantastic counter to Max. Main reason being is because you outrange Max. You can out DPS as well once you've got the ego. And if you pop on the healing star power as well with Lola, you should be able to do pretty decently. The only problem is that once Max gets a lot of speeds, it's pretty hard for Lola. But it's just a decent matchup in a 1v1. Next up we have Belle. So this is more of a kind of skill cap. You know, a good Belle should be able to beat a good Max. The main reason being, again, you can just keep the distance. For me, it's just really hard for Max to get close to a Belle, especially with the Belle traps as well. And next up, we have Poco. So Poco's always been used as a good counter to Max. Main reason being is because Max just lacks the DPS. Always has. Even when Max was the meta like 2-3 years ago, I used to always go Poco to counter Max in competitive. It's still the case, especially since the tuning fork buff to Poco. It's just made Poco an even better counter to Max, especially on like Hot Zone, for example. That's always the go-to. And then lastly, we have Amber. Again, main reason being in that kind of mid-range interaction, Amber has a lot of damage, outranges Max as well, and you've also got the super just to kind of annoy Max. So if you're looking to counter Max in the draft, for example, Max in Brawl, this is just one of them. You might want to go with like, I don't know, Poco's not like the best in sneaky fields, but you might just want to opt for something like that. You want to go with like the Poco in the middle, and then you want to opt for something that is got a lot of HP. So maybe like a Jackie, maybe even a Nita. It's going to be really hard for the Max to deal with Nita's bears consistently. So that's a good synergy. Maybe a tank instead of the Nita, but you get what I'm going for. Now we're going to be looking at the best ways to counter Jean in the form of brawlers. As a Jean main, I know there's a few brawlers that really annoy me, especially when I'm looking for a pull. That's the best way to counter him, right? He can win so many interactions, but when there's like a gadget or a super that he can pull, that's going to be the way to counter him. So the first brawler is going to be Mr. P. It's always been the case. Literally for years and years, Mr. P has always been used to counter Jean. The main reason being is because Jean has a really slow reload speed. So if you're consistently just shooting Mr. P porters, it's not going to end well. And then you try and super, and then there's just a porter just there around the map, especially since the Mr. P porter buff, it's just really hard. You've also got the station as well that you can end up pulling. Mr. P just counters Jean so hard. Next up is going to be Charlie. So again, Charlie's just like Tara. You got the spiders gadget, so especially with the gadget gear as well, there's like literally until Charlie uses 4 sets of spiders, you can't pull her, which is just absolutely crazy. So it's just a free lane for Charlie. And you've also just got the spiders just to waste Jean's ammo. And then of course Tara has always been a really good counter to Jean, not really like in a complete 1v1, but again, you've got the pets that can just protect you from the pool, and Jean hates that. So typically the way to counter Jean is just to use a brawler that has any type of gadget that can be pulled or whatever else. So for example, if it's on Gold or on Gultra, any knockout map, and the opponents go for like a Jean first pick, which is always good in knockout, you want to go a brawler that has a gadget that Jean has to pull. So the prime example of this at the top of the meta is going to be Meg, because you've got the toolbox gadget that can tank it. And then again, I mean, this is just clutching at straws really, but you want to look for brawlers that have a gadget that can like tank it. So like a bow with a totem, for example. Or you want to go with like Leon with that kind of totem. There's a lot of brawlers, Janet, you know, in the past, Grom with his watchtower gadget. You just got to look for that kind of avenue to counter Jean. Moving into the next brawler we're looking to counter is going to be Nita. So Nita in the right map is an absolute S tier broken brawler, so incredibly strong. Any grassy map, she's just going to wreck everybody. It doesn't matter what brawler you use. Eventually, she's going to get her first super and then cycle through to the hypercharge. So there's a few brawlers in particular that always counter Nita. The first brawler being Spike. Even though I don't think Spike's the best brawler right now, he has fallen off a lot damage-wise, and I think Nita can win that matchup now. I think in the past, stereotypically, Spike's always been the go-to to a Nita, especially, say, down a lane like Beach Ball. Then Spike should be able to win that interaction, especially once he gets his super. Next, we have Griff. So I see this strategy used a lot, especially on a good Nita map. I've seen Griff or like a Ruffs into a Nita to break open the map. So you're thinking like Gem Fort, for example. There's a couple of sets of walls that aren't unbreakable. So if you use one Griff gadget and another one and just break open grass points where Nita can't sneak in, then you can just keep your distance. It's not going to destroy Nita in a 1v1, but it's all about breaking open the map because she's very limited in range, and that's literally the best way to counter her is the map pool, because you can't just play her on any map because she's very limited and you're never going to get your super. And the next brawler is going to be Barley. So again, there's a few instances where of course maps with a lot of walls, typically throws are pretty decent. So again, you're going to look at maps like Beach Ball, you're going to look at maps like Super Beach, on Ladder, Canal Grande, where Barley is starting to be drafted more open business as well to counter Nita. It's always been a great matchup in the past. So let's take a look at this. Say for example, I don't know, Gem 4, they first pick Nita, which is actually a really strong first pick. You want to look at ways that breaking open the map. So I would easily go for something like a Griff just to break open those walls, keep a distance against a Nita. And also Amber, I forgot to mention, Amber is a fantastic matchup against Nita because again, you can keep your range, break open the grass as well. So something like this won't be too bad. You probably would want to draft a mid, but one of these two brawlers to counter Nita would be perfect. So moving into the next brawler we're looking to counter, it is Byron. So he's definitely a top 10 brawler in the game right now ever since his damage buff. He's absolutely insane, but the big thing about Byron is that it's pretty easy to counter because like he doesn't have any way to kind of defend himself against any assassins, any aggro. He does once he builds up his super, but you get what I mean. You can take him down in 1v1, and also of course snipers can take him down on long range maps. So long range maps, I don't know, you play Byron on Shooting Star for example, which actually isn't too bad. Then Piper, Nanny and Mandy are pretty good counters to Byron in a 1v1 because again, you've got ways to confirm kills. He's pretty squishy, so you can get a quick 2-tap with Piper with Homemade Recipe. You've got Nanny of course, who's just really good at countering fellow snipers. So that's just the basics on long range maps. In terms of other maps with a lot of rules, I don't know, Dueling Beetles, a few other rare scenarios, Knockout as well. Sprout is a fantastic counter to Byron in a 1v1. Of course, Sprout doesn't have the DPS to keep up with Byron pocket healing someone, so if it's like Byron Meg, then I won't go Sprout. But if you get what I mean, if it's just like a couple of snipers and Sprout can really deal with Byron, super squishy, Sprout just loves that. And then lastly, we have Assassins. So I think the best assassin probably against Byron is Miko because you can dodge his main attack so you don't build him up super. And even if he does get super, you can just jump over it. Miko's a fantastic counter. But again, there's just any real assassins, you know, Buzz, Carl, anyone that's able to just latch onto him so easily. Mortis is going to be an easy takedown. So again, I don't know, but parallel plays is a great map for Byron because he's so good at helping both lanes. So say the opponent picks a first pick of Byron, I think a great counter straight away probably would be banned anyway, but Miko is so good on parallel plays and a great counter to Byron itself. And then you just want to look for something that isn't really too counterable in the mid, I would say. I don't know, like Max, Mr. P, something along those lines. But you definitely want to go Miko or an assassin like Buzz to try and take down the Byron and constantly get the pressure. So moving into the next brawler we're looking to counter, it is Charlie. She's still a top 10 brawler in the game right now, and it's the same type of counters you're going to use against her. Of course, she's pretty good against everything. That's why she's so strong as a mid-range brawler, but she's normally used against tanks. So of course, you want to kind of go that rock, paper, scissors route and beat tank counters. So with Charlie, the best counter I would say, which is really off meta, is Penny. Penny's a great counter to Charlie because you've got the gadget to tank a few of the shots. You've also got the fact that Charlie can never really use her Spider's gadget, so most time you see Charlie actually switch over to the other gadget, or else Penny will just destroy her. And in a 1v1, purely in that 1v1, Penny will be able to win because of the extra DPS. So yeah, Penny's a great counter that not many people think of. Next up we have Sandy. So again, you know, you kind of think of brawlers that shoot through her Spider's gadget, so Sandy's a great counter for that reason. and just in a mid 1v1, you're going to be able to feed a lot of supers through Sandy and of course shoot through her spiders. As I mentioned, Jessie again a great counter because you can just shoot at her spiders gadget really easily, and then in a 1v1 you're going to be able to somewhat win that interaction, and then of course with her super easily win that. There's some good off-meta counters as well to Charlie. There's Byron, who can use the injection star power to shoot through the spiders gadget, and then of course Byron outranges Charlie, so should be able to win that matchup. Then there's Brock as well. Brock can just shoot the spiders with one shot, unlike other sharpshooters who she counters like Belle and Piper. You know, they're going to be Brock's just going to be able to destroy the spiders pretty easily, and of course keep your range against Charlie. And then lastly, Squeak, a good counter to the spiders and whatever else. So quickly, this is an example draft. You know, typically you pick Charlie as a counter option. So let's just say the opponent's left open Chuck, and then they've gone with a Nanny and a Charlie combination, which is quite common on Safe Zone. Again, I'm not a draft expert, but this is just a random draft scenario. And then for example, you would probably want to go a double counter against this Charlie and just overall to get some good damage. So you might want to go with Brock. Brock is a fantastic pick in heist and just really good counter pick to Charlie. And then you probably want to go with Amber. Amber is again another fantastic counter pick to Charlie. You see this a lot on the more mid-range maps because you can shoot through the spiders and just get good pressure in a 1v1. So that's going to be like a good way to counter Charlie. So jumping into the next brawler we're looking to counter is going to be Belle. So Belle's just decent against everything. A good Belle can actually win pretty much every single matchup. There's nothing that completely destroys her over time because she always gets value. Anyways, but the best way to counter is always going to be her fellow sharpshooters. So typically on the longer range maps, you're going to look for those easy counters. So brawlers like Piper, Nanny, and Byron are great counters. Of course, Piper, again, she outranges Belle, and she can two-tap Belle because Belle's pretty squishy. A good Piper and a good Belle, Piper will win every single time. And of course, Nanny will as well because, again, it's just the same type of counters. That's why Piper and Nanny are so good in the meta, because they're just going to be so dominant against their fellow sharpshooters. And then Byron, that's going to be like a weird one. You might be like, why does Byron counter Belle? Because they've got very similar range, but Byron has a bigger projectile and I think a faster projectile. I'm not entirely sure, but in a 1v1, I just always seem to beat Belle easily with a Byron. You've also got the heal gadget as well that can help you out. You've got a super that can confirm kills better than Belle, so I just like that interaction a lot. Bit of a weird one, I know, but trust me, try it out. And then of course there's other sharpshooters like Angelo and Mandy, so you're just thinking of all the other sharpshooters, they're going to be better than Belle. Main reason being because she's kind of that brawler that's just good at everything, so of course she can't just excel at being a sharpshooter as well, or else she would be broken. So let's go for an example draft really quick. So let's just say in shooting star, the opponent first picks a Belle, which is just pretty decent into everything. Let's just say Piper and Nanny are banned because they're pretty much banned every single time. So a good draft, you probably wouldn't go with something like Mandy or a Meg against that. I mean, they're not going to completely hard counter her, but it's just going to be decent. You know, Mandy, if it's a good Mandy, they're going to be able to keep the range and beat Belle in a 1v1. Again, I won't advise this in pro play, but in ranked, Mandy should be pretty easy. And then goes something like a thrower or Mr. P that can be really annoying against Belle. Of course, Belle is super squishy, so throwers are going to be really good against her. Now we're going to be moving on to the final brawler who we're looking to counter, and it's going to be Piper. She's still an absolute menace in the meta right now. Still so good against everything, and she can just manipulate her build to counter assassins, counter long-range sharpshooters. It's just pretty hard to find ways to beat Piper right now. So the best brawler to counter Piper is definitely going to be Meg. So a good Meg versus a good Piper, a good Meg will win every single time. It's not going to like kill Piper on the map every single time, but it's all about pressure. It's all about putting Piper into spawn, because of course Piper has a really slow reload speed. She hits hard, but a couple of missed shots, and of course with Meg's gadgets, you can just win the matchup so easily. Just use Meg against Piper. My success rate must be like 99%. I'm not even joking. Such an easy matchup. Next up we have a Nanny. So again, when you're looking at sharpshooters, Nanny's the best counter to Piper, literally for years and years. Main reason being is because you got the return to sender. If Piper ever wants to two-tap Nanny, she can't, because Nanny can just tap the gadget and return back all of that big damage. There's just no way. The only way you can beat that matchup is if Nanny wastes a gadget or doesn't press it in time, which most of the time is a skill issue. Yeah, Nanny should be able to win that matchup every single time. And the next one is going to be Charlie. Charlie's a great counter to Piper because she's still got the good range to compete with Piper on like hideout or something like that. But its main reason being is because of the spider's gadget. You can waste Piper's ammo and just get position on the map, because Piper really hates it when there's like aggression or just any type of brawler, forcing her back into spawn. So again, brawlers like Max, Mortis, Sam, other kind of assassins, it's still going to be really annoying for her because she doesn't deal a lot of damage up close. So again, example draft, let's just say for whatever reasons your team, you ban Nanny, I don't know, or something, and your teammate doesn't ban Piper and they have first pick, so they get a Piper on shooting star, which is just so annoying to counter. But you've got some good ways to counter her. So straight away, I just think Meg, you want to pick Meg into Piper, no doubt. And then if you're really skillful, again, it takes a lot of skill to play Max on shooting star, but that synergy together would be absolutely beautiful. You just get constant aggression and you'll be able to counter Piper pretty easily. So that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. So a little bit of a different approach. I also want to shout out to Semantic, who helped me with a few of these, like Sandy and Max, for example, who are pretty hard brawlers to counter in the meta. But he also gave a suggestion at just trying out, like, explaining some drafts. And I thought the perfect website for this is Power League Prodigy. So again, make sure to check them out. Really good way to just discuss things. Let me know whether you like this new format to help you guys improve with the drafting and just overall thinking when you're looking to counter these brawlers. But that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.